Okay, my name is Pat Hopkins, and I'm doing my report on Jerery Uelsmann, who is, I'm calling him a neo-surrealist photographer. Here's a quote. He says, "I simultaneously deal with both process and idea in order to realize how the manipulation of the image may affect the content. The problem is coming up with an image that has some kind of substance or resonance that challenges the viewer with elements of enigma and mystery." The biographical information on him is that he was born on June the 11th, 1934, in Detroit, Michigan. He developed his interest in photography at the age of 14, and while he was in high school, he was working part-time at a photography studio, and he also did wedding assignments. He studied photography at the Rochester Institute of Technology, and that was where he earned his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in 1957. He earned his Master of Fine Arts and his Master of Science degrees at the Indiana University in 1960. And he learned photography in order to teach, and he is still continuing to create photography today. For his career, his first job offer came in 1960, and it was for teaching photography at the University of Florida at Gainesville. And he was in an art department of that university, but he was the only photographer in the whole art department. He was supported by colleagues because they were encouraging him to explore all the different options that were available to him in the darkroom of the university there. In 1967, he had his first one-man exhibition at the University of Modern Art in New York City. This launched his photography career, and he was made a graduate research professor of art at the University of Florida, Gainesville in 1974. Some of his achievements are that he received a Guggenheim Fellowship in 1967, and he received a fellowship with the National Endowment of the Arts in 1972. He's a fellow of the Royal Photographic Society of Great Britain and a founding member of the American Society for Photographic Education. His work has been exhibited in over 125 shows in both the U.S. and worldwide over the past 40 years. His photos are in collections of numerous museums, and he continues to photograph and lecture about his work. This image is called Bless Our Home and Eagle, and he created it by making two exposures on the same image. He did this by covering the top of the lens to make one exposure and then covering the bottom half to make the other. The composition seems formal, and the photo is interpreted as two interacting symbols. This one is called Small Woods Where I Met Myself, and it's interesting because of the way it was divided horizontally across the middle, and the bottom is a negative of the top portion, except right here. There's a distinctive central figure behind a tree that is shown in the top portion and not in the bottom. This leads the viewer to focus their attention in this area because the bottom portion is empty and is dark. This one is untitled, and Uelsmann was said that he never wanted to switch to using digital cameras. He said, "I am sympathetic to the current digital revolution and excited by the visual options created by the computer. However, I feel my creative process remains intrinsically linked to the alchemy of the darkroom." This one is another untitled one, and it was compiled from many different negatives. The image is composed symmetrically from the center, except for this small image, which is a duplicate of the central tree. This figure is called Dream Theater, and it's representative of several of his images, which are ethereal and dreamlike. It supports the idea of several different separate symbolic representations that are related. This image is called Tree Goddess. It's composed with perfect symmetry between the left and the right sides. This one is another untitled one. I wanted to make another quote from Jerry Uelsmann. No, I'm sorry. This is from the website called Famous Photographers discussing Jerry Uelsmann's work. And the person said, for Jerry Uelsmann, the camera is the tool that enables him to interact in a different manner, emotionally, instead of mentally, with the world from which he gets his inspiration for his artistic work in order to capture the true essence of life. This image is called Colorado Rock, and it's a landscape where the landscape itself seems to drop back, and in the foreground there looms a prominent floating boulder. It's coming forward toward us like in a vision. This image is called The Place of Several Mysteries, and it's one of the themes developed by Uelsmann, which shows the interaction between light and darkness. This image is another untitled one. I have a quote from Richard Pinnock and discussing Jerry Uelsmann's work, and he said, a true darkroom alchemist, he combines light, chemistry, and the base metal of silver to conjure marvelous dreamscapes rich in symbolic and psychological meaning. This one is another untitled one. It shows the surface of a desk consumed by fire while the rest of the landscape remains unscathed. The desk and the chair represent man's presence in the natural world. This is symbolic of man's disastrous interaction with nature. This is another untitled image, and it shows another of Uelsmann's common themes, which is open hands placed together side by side with the palms up. It represents a dreamscape where the clouds create a floor. This is another one, untitled. This is another untitled one. It's a combination print that was done of a portrait of a woman put together with a man's hands. This one is commonly referred to as the philosopher's desk by some galleries where it has been shown, but it was not titled that officially by Uelsmann. An interesting thing is there are two versions of this one. In the first version, there was not a shadow cast on the desk by the figure of the man walking here, and it was suggested by his wife, Maggie Taylor, that he should include a shadow on the surface. He then added the shadow in a later version. This image is another untitled one. It's an example of one of the themes that Uelsmann did in his work. That theme is emphasizing the woman's relationship with the earth and the natural elements that are shown around her. This is another untitled one. This image was not given an official title by Uelsmann, but it was called Lips on Road by some photography critics. The concept represents man's interaction with nature, which is a recurring theme for several of Uelsmann's images. This is another untitled image. This image shows Uelsmann's complex technique involving multiple printing, where he's able to have the symbolic effect of the photograph become more intricate. This is another untitled one. This image shows the outline of a woman's body, but within the form of the woman there's a sky scene showing clouds. The rest of the image seems to present an outdoor scene. This is another image showing the emphasis being on woman's relationship with the earth and the natural elements. This image is titled Threshold. It shows a pair of open hands, and in the hands are a nest with an empty egg. It symbolizes birth and life and freedom. The significant things about his work are that he uses an Arca Swiss 4-inch by 5-inch f-metric camera. He constructs his photos from unrelated negatives, creating photomontage images. His complex composting methods are done strictly using darkroom techniques. He utilizes multiple enlargers. The photos are created without the aid of any photo editing software or use of any computers. The genre is called either photo manipulation or fine art.